Hi everyone, this is J. Hope Suis from Hope Boulevard, and I am continuing with my series of reading my book, Midlife Joyride, Loving the Single Lane. I've changed scenery, background, as you can probably tell. I'm going to sit outside for this one. I am on chapter 2 of the first section, which is How Did We End Up Here, meaning single in midlife. Chapter 2 is called The Divided Highway, Divorce. The quote for this chapter is from Henry Ford, and it says, "Failure is simply the opportunity to begin again, this time more intelligently," which is probably how most of us feel about our divorce. Each year there is an average of 850,000 divorces, according to the CDC. Entire books have been written on this subject, and I've got one chapter. It is devastating and it is sad, but it's not the end of your road. Let's not stay here too long. As I mentioned earlier, I was divorced twice before I turned 30. This is not something I'm proud of, but it is the truth. And what I have learned while trying to encourage others and hear their stories is that it's imperative that I remain honest about mine. I must keep it real in order to be heard. In keeping it very real, only a small number of people know that I actually married and divorced my second husband twice. How is that for an interesting lesson in U-turns? While I typically tell people I have been divorced twice, in reality I have 2 ex-husbands, but 3 sets of divorce papers. Here's what happened. My first marriage was almost a blur. I was 19 and ran away halfway across the country with a traveling construction worker. True story. He was 30 and should have known better, as should I, but nevertheless I left home to join him on his various jobs. As a country girl, I had a 4-wheel drive truck, which I'm sure sweetened the deal on his end. And I thought I was being adventurous and brave. I was actually being stupid and hurtful to my family and myself. I ended up broke, without my truck, 7 months pregnant, and living in a camper. We married when I discovered I was pregnant because it was the right thing to do, when in fact it probably was not. I am no longer a supporter of that type of decision. I did manage to get home with him in tow and have my baby girl, but by the time she was about a year old, I was a single mom. He did stay for a while after she was born, but it was truly doomed from the start. Enter second husband, Rusty. I met Rusty while working for the Daily Press newspaper in Virginia. I worked in the advertising department, and he drove a truck delivering the afternoon paper. I walked over to the warehouse every day for the hot-off-the-press afternoon edition, which is how I started running into him. He was tall, blonde, and handsome, 2 years younger than me, a true California beach boy transplant. When he asked me out, I was honest about my daughter, but it didn't faze him. We started dating, and I will admit, I truly fell for him. He was great to my daughter, the only father she ever knew. He was great, and after dating for 2 years, we decided to get married. We were still so young. I was 23 and he was 21, but I thought we were ready. He had a house and had moved up within the company, and I was now working for an insurance company. It seemed right. We got married in his backyard. I walked down the aisle to Queen's version of the bridal march with my 3-year-old daughter as my flower girl. It was a great day. So what happened? We were in love. That's all it takes, right? No, that is simply not true, and only useful in song lyrics and Hallmark cards. First, there were the little struggles that all new young couples have, and then there were the larger ones. I never thought he spent enough time with me. He thought I nagged too much. I was jealous. He was resentful. In the midst of all this, I became pregnant again, and he was diagnosed with juvenile diabetes, which at the age of 24 is quite startling to discover. He was resistant to the doctor's instructions, and I was always upset about his dismissal of his disease. We fought about it constantly, and eventually he too left before his daughter turned a year old. It was hard to be on my own with 2 young children and divorced twice at only 28 years old. Fortunately, I had great support from my family and a good church. I was living in North Carolina and Rusty was living in Virginia. He didn't see the girls very often, but they missed him terribly. Even though my youngest never really lived with her father, every time she saw him, she clung to him like life itself. She adored him, and it broke my heart to witness her sadness every time he had to leave. He remarried quite quickly after our divorce, and neither of the girls liked his new wife. I can't really put my finger on when the shift happened. He started taking better care of himself. He would visit without his wife because the girls disliked her so much, and slowly my anger subsided and my stance softened. My daughters loved him so much, and in 5 years I had not met anyone even close to being serious. I did not encourage or ask him to come back to us, but his marriage dissolved quietly and we discussed a second chance. We remarried about 5 years after our divorce. My love was different, and I knew that going in, but I truly felt like I was doing the right thing for my girls. Unfortunately, his health issues were worsening. When someone is diagnosed with juvenile diabetes as an adult, years of damage have already been done internally. In his early 30s, he began experiencing neuropathy, extreme pain, and damage to the nerve endings in his legs and feet. He was unable to keep a job and turned to drugs, the illegal kind, to help with the pain. I turned a blind eye at first. I felt sorry for him. The young, beautiful, healthy Adonis was now sick, thin, and in constant pain. He still tried to be a good father and even a good husband, but slowly the drugs overtook him. We went to counseling, and I urged him to go to rehab. I promised him that me and the girls would wait for him. Finally, he agreed to go on the condition that it would be a rehab center in Virginia near his mom. I let him go because it was really the only chance we had. He moved back to Virginia, but he never went to rehab, and eventually I filed for my 3rd divorce. I am sure having 3 divorces in the first 3 decades of my life caused me to stop and reflect on my decisions and relationship skills. It also has played a role in me being hesitant to try again. I have spent the last 20 years learning and reading and working to make myself a better person and partner. I have certainly dated, and those adventures will be shared in following chapters, but it was important for me to approach love and relationships differently. I hate man bashing. Men are the brunt of the joke on far too many social media posts, television shows, and counseling couches. For all the complaining some women do about men, they still pursue them diligently. I know there are bad men out there. I had 2 who abandoned me and their children. I've dated men who cheated on me. But there are bad women out there too, and the eroding marital landscape has enough blame to go around on both sides. If we as individuals, and not genders, are not willing to face our own struggles and baggage, we will continue to wreak havoc on our journey. So how did I contribute to my own sad endings? The list is long. The much younger version of me was looking to escape a small-town mentality with which I did not align. But I took the easy way out that was not quite so easy after all. I didn't possess the discipline to chart a course for my life and take positive steps. I hooked my truck literally to one of the few trains I saw leaving. I quickly realized my mistake, but pride would not let me turn around. My pride was eventually broken when I found myself living in someone else's camper with nothing to my name. The now scarred version of me saw light and energy the second time, but I was still looking for an escape. I was codependent and needy, and I demanded more than one man should have had to provide. I asked him to prove his love for me, but on my terms and by my definition. When he resisted, I withdrew and pouted. I was loving from a defensive position and not freely without expectations. We did not know how to effectively communicate. By the 3rd time, I just lost some of my will to try. I believed my sacrifice was warranted for my children. We didn't argue because anger is an emotion, and I didn't have enough emotion to participate. This is the position that many couples are in who stay together for the children. The love is lost, but they want the family unit to stay intact. It is a hollow unit at best, and a very lonely existence. For me, coming out of the fog, I had to work on myself. I needed to believe in myself and my decisions. I had to evaluate, research, and slow down enough to hear my heart talking to me. It was a long journey, but I have made great progress. What about the rest of you? What does your divorce look like? Divorce is an epic tragedy that plays out everywhere I go. I hear stories and see the aftermath of pain. Some marriages last just a short time, like mine. Others go on for years. And from the outside, they look to have successfully beaten the odds. Unfortunately, things are not always how they appear. The gray divorce. In a confusing trend that puzzles those who study them, baby boomers now lead the pack when it comes to divorce. It even has its own phrase, the gray divorce. Although I'm inclined to believe that most of us divorcing at this age do our very best to cover up those pesky gray hairs. According to the Pew Research Center, the divorce rate for those aged 50 and over has doubled since the 1990s. Surprisingly enough, the whippersnapper millennials with their full natural hair appear to have a better handle on marriage than their parents. Nowadays, Generation Y gets married later and stays married longer. So why do we in midlife find it so hard to remain committed? What can we learn from it? And how do we heal from it? There are countless statistics on why people marry, how long they stay that way, and how many overall times they attempt it. There's really too much ground to cover every scenario. For the sake of this chapter, we will look at marriages of around 20 plus years, regardless of first or second, that end in divorce. All married couples expect to make it through the honeymoon phase. After all, that's the fun part. Life then kicks in and consistency lays the groundwork for hopefully a stable and healthy relationship. Within the first few years, maybe the babies come, a career promotion, a house with the proverbial white picket fence, and your first real family car. Suddenly, life gets busier than ever with responsibilities, bills to pay, dividing holidays between in-laws, etc. And soon you're not Derek and Meredith on Grey's Anatomy, but the family on the Wonder Years. The 7-year mark, the itch, inches closer. Each partner eyes the other to see who will flinch first. Maybe it's more of a twitch than a flinch. You both worry about your budding crow's feet, your expanding waistlines, and the glimmers of gray in your cough. Then another 10 years fly by. Birthdays, holidays, anniversaries, vacations. The kids get out of school or very close. You are finally at a bittersweet moment. You both have spent years investing in yourselves and your children, anticipating the days of just enjoying each other again. Then one day, seemingly out of the blue, someone wants out. The current trend is that 66% of new midlife divorces are initiated by women. A majority of those, 53%, cite emotional and physiological abuse. I'm not assigning blame, I'm just noting the statistics. There are two sides to every story, but I do believe there are some truth in the numbers. Manipulation, at first glance, can appear charming and masked as concern. Women want to please their partners, so they try to live up to the pressures and demands of looking a certain way, behaving a certain way, and creating the appearance of a beautiful life. Somewhere along the way, the charade falls apart. A woman who has felt restrained and ridiculed for years will wake up one day and decide she's going to live the rest of her life on her own terms. Then there is the woman who is discarded like a used dish rag and traded in for a younger model. I have a very dear friend who lived out this reality. She was a struggling young student, as was he. They met, fell in love, and married. She put her dreams on hold to go to work and put him through school. He received his degree and climbed the corporate ladder in record speed. She was so proud of him They had 2 children together. She worked every day raising the children while he traveled the world, amassed wealth, promotions, and recognition, while she was paid in dirty diapers and dishes. I'm sure there were signs she missed or ignored, but she believed if she stayed the course, supported her husband, and made a lovely home for him to return, they would eventually be together full time, living a very comfortable life that included travel, luxuries, and together forever. One day, much to her surprise, she found out he had acquired an oceanfront condo in California, his own secret hideaway. Imagine her horror to discover it was purchased as a love nest for a woman 20 years her junior. The discovery was planned to facilitate what he did not have the guts to admit. He wanted a divorce and to start a new life with this younger version of my friend, unsaddled with the children. My friend was used, played, and left alone unceremoniously in midlife. Starting over for her has been a shocking reality. She went from plans of ease to starting over from scratch. She has done marvelous, and I am tremendously proud of her, but the scars are real and very deep. The bitterness surfaces at unexpected moments, and the emotional toll on the children is significant. But hers is not an isolated incident. It plays out all over. What about the guys? What do they say? The most common reason given for divorce by men is we just grew apart. For starters, they probably say that for lack of knowing what else to say, and it sounds innocent enough. Sometimes we do drift apart from the center, and other times we keep certain things and traits to ourselves. The control freak with a bondage fetish is not going to reveal that on the first date. Except that's probably not entirely true, but there are dedicated websites for those topics. People do misrepresent themselves, but it's a stretch to believe they hide their truth for years until they can no longer deny it. The other issue for me is that I'm not exactly sure what growing apart means. Of course, I understand the implication. The two do not see eye to eye anymore. Their vision and focus has changed. One or both morphed into a completely different person. Does that really happen? I believe the original term grow apart is actually a reference to a tree. As a tree grows and an object gets in the way, the tree will do one of 2 things: grow around it and incorporate it into the tree, or grow away from it, apart. As a relationship develops, the couple will encounter obstacles along the way. How they handle those obstacles means the difference in growing around it and coming together for a closer bond, or growing away from it and end up apart, literally. I have also heard many guys say they knew the marriage was over for years, but they stayed for the children. There are many legitimate opposing views on this, on whether this is actually in the best interest of the child. I, for one, did not make that choice. I removed myself from what I considered an unhealthy situation and chose to raise my children alone. Did this decision affect them? Absolutely. Did they struggle with trust in relationships and fear of abandonment? I am pretty sure they did. Was I right? I don't know. The right thing would have been not to get involved with an unhealthy person, but I had already made that decision along with making the child. From that point on, I just had to do the best I could. To say you stay together for the sake of the children assumes that you and your spouse are Oscar-winning performers. Children, if anything, are intelligent and see right through a sham. I do not know too many people who can pull off pretending to love and get along with someone they are counting down the days to get rid of. Nevertheless, it is quite common for the marriage to stay intact until the children are grown and gone, or at least finish in high school. I'm still not convinced waiting until they are ready to start out on their own is the right time to pull out from under them everything they thought was real. Whether they knew it all along or are surprised by the decision, the fact remains everyone's life will change, and there are 2 middle-aged single people getting ready to start over. Before you start over, here are a few things you need to take care of first. So that's where I'm going to end this video. I do have a little bit more in chapter 2 on divorce and starting over after divorce. So if you want to finish the chapter,